In 2023, Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital.
Lucy Letby, over a period of almost 13 months between June 2015 and June 2016, when in your mid-20s and employed as a neonatal nurse in the Countess of Chester Hospital in Chester, with specialist training in intensive care, you murdered 7 babies and attempted to murder 6 others.
5 voices: a politician, a parent, a statistician, a whistleblower, a journalist, question whether Lucy Letby was a scapegoat for systemic failures.
Okay, well, obviously, like most of the population, I was aware of the case, but it wasn't until after the conviction that I realized that this is potentially one of the worst miscarriages of justice in living memory.
When it first came out in the press that she was convicted and sent to prison, I had an incredibly emotional reaction. And I realized that that was because it was personal. You know, my feelings, my reaction was one of a personal nature. And now I look back and I regret that, because I just took it on face value. And there was this whole idea that she had targeted twins and multiples. And then very soon after that, I attended one Zoom with Science on Trial, and there were lots of different people that were talking about it. And I only went to one, but it was enough to make me think, maybe there's more to this, but I'm going to reserve judgment. And I carried on with my work, carried on campaigning, carried on all of that. And then in December, I had a reason to go back over my research, and I kept thinking, what happened in 2015? What happened in 2015? Because I had been told that there was some corruption within the stillbirth rates in that time, during that time. And then I literally woke up and I was like, Lucy Letby. And I had a theory. And my theory was, knowing how the stillbirth statistics are collated and how the audit was conducted, which has been edited, I believe, a number of times. The first theory I had was, if you have somebody who's a murderer, then it's not poor care or mishandling of treatment to poorly babies.
And just didn't think anything more of it. And then one day, I think I was just watching the news, and last year, I think it was about May of last year, and David Davies did some announcement in Parliament about the fact that there was an article in the New Yorker that had been restricted in the UK, so we couldn't have access to it. And I thought, well, if there's something that the government doesn't want us to see, I need to see it.
Yeah.
So I went about using a VPN and spent a whole evening. You've probably read it, the New Yorker article. Spent a whole evening with a few snacks, a few drinks, just sitting up and reading it. And by the end of it, I was absolutely horrified. I thought to myself, how could they have prosecuted someone knowing all this information? How could they have even considered it?
Now, as a caveat, I haven't scrutinised all the evidence seen by the jury, but I am guided by some independent experts who have done so. And I recommend the forensic analysis on the website Science on Trial. Now, obviously, we can't go into all the detail here, but fundamentally, there are 3 major anomalies. Firstly, Lucy Letby was convicted wholly on circumstantial evidence. Nobody saw her harm any baby. Her colleagues respected her as a competent and caring practitioner, and some continue to stand by her now. Secondly, prominence was given to a chart showing which nurses were on duty at the time that babies died or deteriorated in this period from June 2015 to June 2016. But this chart was very misleading because it was presented as kind of damning evidence that Lucy Letby was always there whenever a baby died, which is just not true. The chart only showed the cases considered by the court. So by definition, she was on duty at that time.
Dr. Richard Gill is a statistician who helped free Dutch nurse Lucia de Burgh in an eerily similar case from a wrongful conviction, sees Lucy Letby's case as a chilling echo of systemic scapegoating.
And I was doing applied statistics of various kinds, and then the Dutch nurse case started.
So I was going to ask about that, yeah.
Yeah. So we read in the newspaper stories just like people have read in the newspapers about Lucy Letby, police investigating an inexplicable spike in deaths at a children's hospital. So it was a children's hospital, not a neonatal unit, but basically the same thing. Inexplicable spike in deaths, nurses helping them with their inquiries, okay, and she was always there when the bad things happened. It's this identical story. Now, I didn't work on the case. I just sort of followed it in the newspaper and so on. I knew about it. I knew that friends of mine were working for the prosecution and for the defense, respectively. I mean, I had two friends who had been, instructed by each side and they did stuff during the trial. Now, initially, Lucia de Burgh was convicted. The Dutch nurse, Lucia, another amazing coincidence, was convicted on the basis of a probability calculation. A statistician stood up in court and said it was 1 in 342 million was the chance that it could happen by chance that she would be present at so many suspicious events, deaths and collapses. And this probability, which was spoken in court by, he wasn't actually a professor at the time, but he was, a very serious academic. And it actually convinced a lot of people at the time that Lucia was guilty. It caused a shock in the courtroom. Right? At that moment, seasoned reporters who till then had been thinking this is a load of bullshit, that it changed their minds. They now knew that Lucia was guilty. Now, that was in 2003. Before, the prosecution now had what seemed to be like powerful medical evidence. So and she got convicted again. And and then people like me kind of, could relax again because, she's been convicted on the grounds of really strong medical evidence and we don't have to worry about any possible misuse of statistics. But then in 2005, the first whistleblowers started coming out of the woodwork. And indeed, one of them published a book. And in it, he showed, so this wasn't me, this was somebody else, a very good, great guy, who, working with a doctor, was a doctor and a professor of the philosophy of science, brother and sister pair. They showed that the reasoning of the court still was sort of permeated with statistics, but in an informal way. You didn't need to do any probability calculation to see that Lucia was always there and that it was weird. You just looked at the raw numbers. It's a bit like the spreadsheet in the Lucy Letby case. You just look at it and you think, oh my God, 25 suspicious events, she's there every time, right? You don't need to do any probability now. But it is statistics. That is a summary of statistical data. And it's giving a statistical message, namely, this coincidence can't be chance. So anyway, in 2005, I got really angry because I found out that my profession had basically been lied to by the Dutch courts because they said they were not using statistics, but actually they still were. And so I was so angry, I got very deeply involved in a campaign which lasted 5 years to get Lucia de Burgh a fair new trial. And we finally succeeded. It was in 2010. And that was one of the happiest days of my life.
Hospital failures stole lives. but Lucy Letby bore the blame.
First theory I had was, if you have somebody who's a murderer, then it's not poor care or mishandling of treatment to poorly babies. And then I started to reach out to people who took the very little information that I had and played it off as their own. And then when I discovered that the first babies were not booked, the first two twins, which were the first babies, and that there was, I think, 2/3 of the babies were twins and multiples, I began to think, what if those babies were not meant to be born there? What if those babies were having care at a hospital that was part of the audit? And I wanted to be wrong. But the more I looked at the individual cases, the more I realised that babies who were admitted to larger hospitals that were involved, and also those that were under the care of the Countess of Chester, but also having care under other hospitals, specialist care under other hospitals.
At the time, an election year or an election coming up, an election campaign, and the last thing they needed was for the NHS to be exposed as having all the problems that the Countess of Chester had, leading to deaths of lots of babies. You know, that politically is a really bad thing. So I think there was a lot of pressure put on the hospital, the managers of the hospital, by politicians to cover up what had really gone on in the hospital, because it was a scandal, an NHS scandal, which is bigger than a serial killer. A serial killer is all right, you can't do anything about that because that was going on behind your back. But something that's right in your face, you probably know about all the sewage problems that they had, an illness called Pseudomonas, which was causing lots of infections, not just in the neonatal ward, but across the whole hospital. And, they needed to cover all those things up. So they did everything to suppress those in the trial. And even though her lawyer tried to bring it up and brought the plumber in to talk about it, they tried to suppress it and say it's not relevant to the death of these babies, but it was 100% relevant to the death of the babies. And there's just other things, obviously the malpractice reports by the Royal College, because the Royal College went in and did an inspection because the chief executive asked him to do an inspection because of the allegations against Lucy Letby. He needed to know whether the problems were within the hospital, whether it was a nurse running rogue, and the Royal College found that it was actually the problems with the hospital and not a nurse, on a killing spree.
Now, these were 3 identical triplets sharing a placenta, and twins and triplets which share a placenta are at risk for several diseases. One of them is called TTTS, twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and that means you've got 3 identical babies with just one placenta. So the blood is going to 3 babies. Well, the placenta is giving blood to 3 babies, and sometimes you get a situation that blood to and from one of the babies is actually coming from one of the others. Right, so like it's called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome because one of the babies is actually the blood supply for the other one. There's a lot of evidence that several of those twins and also the triplet actually had this. Now, there's also pretty clear that the mothers of those babies were having antenatal care at Liverpool Women's Hospital. So that is pretty odd, isn't it? Seems to me they should have been born at Liverpool Women's. They might have had a chance of life if they had been cared for at Liverpool Women's level 3 neonatal intensive care unit. But for totally obscure reasons, they were somehow turned up at Countess of Chester, where things did not go well.
Well, I believe she was framed from the outset. And I think that there was a very critical report about the neonatal unit by the Royal College of Paediatricians. Now, Lucy Letby started work there in 2012, and there were no problems with her performance at all. Then suddenly in 2015, she starts murdering babies. Well, let's look at what else happened at that time. That the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital was upgraded so that it could take all these quite very vulnerable neonates, premature babies, that would previously have gone to a specialist unit. Now, it's another misleading piece of evidence in the court was that the deaths plummeted to almost to zero after Lucy Letby left. But that was because the unit was downgraded again. The unit was no longer allowed to take these extremely vulnerable babies. Once it resumed its status, the death rate went up. And in fact, the highest death rate at the neonatal unit, Countess of Chester Hospital, was in 2019, long after Lucy Letby had gone.
I knew something was wrong with this. Yeah. I could feel it, and it's clearly, just looking at the evidence logically, it's all circumstantial, which has clearly been set up by some people, and some of the people who gave evidence against her are probably covering up for themselves.
A broken system branded Lucy Letby the villain.
And so that spreadsheet in the Lucy Letby case is sort of a fake. It's an illusion. And it's even a lie, because on the bottom line of the spreadsheet in small print, it says these are all the suspicious events. And it is not even. They've left out 10. They've left out 10 events which their expert said were suspicious, but they haven't put them in the list. So
because Lucy Letby wasn't on shift, that's why they're not in there, basically.
No, nobody really knows. Nobody knows. Right. Maybe there was just nothing special about them, or they were so obvious natural events that they weren't worth bothering with, in a sense. I mean, there was absolutely nothing to say about them. So, and maybe she was there because she was there a very great deal. She was there a very great deal, doing lots of overtime, lots of long, so-called long days, which is like 14-hour shifts.
The court didn't consider the cases that occurred when she was off duty, which was, more than half of the babies that died in that period. And then thirdly, the crucial evidence that convicted Lucy Letby of murdering and attempting to murder these babies relied on somebody who came forward as an expert, a retired paediatrician called Dr. Dewi Evans, and he put himself forward to the National Crime Agency, and he made some hypothetical, highly speculative claims about how these babies could have died at the hands of Lucy Letby. But this went against the autopsies carried out by the coroner at the time on each of these babies that showed they all died from natural causes.
Basically, he was a consultant, wasn't he, at the hospital, basically said in court that he walked past a room where Lucy Letby was standing over a baby. The baby was crashing, it was clearly dying, and Lucy Letby was doing nothing to save it, hadn't alerted anyone. That was a red flag to him. I think that was the language he used, wasn't it, Carl? Yeah. And then these emails come out in a later inquiry that the hospital wanted to block, where he's writing in these emails saying, I was called to the room by Lucy Letby, who alerted me that a child was crashing, and so I was called to the room to try and save the child. And you're like, dude, you said the opposite in court. That's a smoking gun for me, Carl.
What you've done is you've replaced air embolism, for example, with A and B, with a consequence of antiphospholipid syndrome. When the mother had gestational hypertension and cholestasis and was carrying twins, those things, most twin mothers have had cholestasis or know that it's a big risk. A lot of women who've been pregnant have had gestational hypertension or preeclampsia. So that's not rare. So if you was to, talk about the black and the white of the dartboard, cholestasis, gestational hypertension or preeclampsia, the vast majority of the population is going to understand what those two conditions are. But once you start talking about a rare condition like antiphospholipid syndrome potentially causing the death of babies, you're replacing a bullseye with another fucking bullseye. And it's like, it's just a red herring.
Which is, the hospital was caring for babies of extremely great frailty and acuity who should not have been there. There are a number of babies who definitely, according to what you can learn about what their situation was, at birth, and even known before birth what it was going to be. There were babies who needed level 3 care. And in particular, there's a huge preponderance of twins and even a triplet. And these are twins and a triplet with known serious complications, which should never, ever, ever have been cared for at Liverpool. Sorry, I'm sort of giving away where I want to get to. Should never, ever have been cared for at the Countess of Chester. Countess of Chester was effectively a level 1 unit. There's 1, 2, 3, and there are various rules about a degree of prematurity, birth weight, and so on and so on. The Countess of Chester is now a level 1 unit. It's been dropped to level 1, and basically it was a level 1 unit at the time, though on paper it was level 2.
And have shown to be lying.
Yes. Now more and more is coming out every week, every day almost. Another thing that has been presented to the trial is wrong, or there's evidence that's been withheld. I mean, the thing for me right at the beginning was the dodgy spreadsheet. Showing that there were 17 cases or something, and she was present at all of them, when actually there were many, many more cases of babies dying or having health crashes where she wasn't even present at all.
Yeah.
Shaky evidence, charts, lies, and testimony unravel Lucy Letby's guilt.
I am sounding the alarm, and no one's listening. And with every day that goes past, women are receiving poor care. And the fact is that pregnancy in and of itself is not risky. I mean, I've supported many, many women pregnant with twins and multiples. And I advocate for them to get the best possible care, and I direct them towards that care. I've never had a stillbirth. I've never had a neonatal death in the women that I've supported. That's not because of me, it's because I sent them to the people that I know can actually support them, and they go to term. I think the toxicity, I don't know. Someone has to care from high up. Someone needs to really care, because all of the methods that we have to monitor, the neonatal death rates or the perinatal mortality or maternal mortality, and the inquiries, the independent inquiries, they're all connected. There's no independence. There's no autonomy. And there always was in maternity. And it upsets me, because if I go into maternity wards, and, when I used to work as a doula, I used to find that people were quite wary or defensive with me, because a lot of, it's from the top down. The toxicity and the need to control and to be right is all the way down. And then the work that I did as a doula, I always wanted to be helpful to everybody there in order to ensure that my client was being heard, the person that I was supporting the families that I was supporting were being heard. I wasn't there to have an argument. I wasn't there to get in the way. But, it's like a battlefield. Someone that I think would be really interesting for you to speak to, he likened the NICU experience to the Stanford experiment. And it is like that, the way it's set up. If I had the answer, but the problem is that I've reached out to every single person from high up, and you might get this analogy with, your background with football and all that kind of stuff, but I was offered whistleblower protections by a by somebody who works with David Davis, and it never came through.
Talking about my daughter being in special care and how awful an experience it was and how good the nurses were and how many babies I saw crash. Whilst in that 8 weeks that I was in special care, I saw like probably 10 babies crash. So the whole idea that babies don't crash in a neonatal ward is a lie. It was an absolute lie. And
Everyone can see that they've done something wrong, but they're trying to cover it up and keeping an innocent woman in prison and basically this is psychological torture.
Well,
they're
yeah,
giving her hell.
Yeah, I mean, she's
Horrible.
She's, in solitary confinement. I mean, and that will be for her own protection because, a child killer or perceived child killer in prison, I dread to think, well, that kind of treatment would be like.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Was it Peter Hunt announced it's going to be an inquiry into maternity care?
Right.
I mean, the government has admitted that maternity care in the UK is shit, and they need to find out. And of course, it was shit, and that was one of the reasons the Lucy Letby case happened. So this is just not going to stop, but it's going to be delayed for a long time.
I can imagine. I don't think people realise either, Rich, just how many people are in prison wrongly. It's a staggering number. I interviewed a former police sergeant a few months back. Yeah. Sorry, and I'm open to lots of stuff, but even I was sat there looking at him when he was saying the numbers of people, thousands of people. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of people that are spending decades sometimes in prison for stuff they've never done. It's horrendous.
It seems to be about 10%, and especially of the people in prison for a long time for very serious crimes, because very serious crimes are the ones where the system often goes wrong. And of course, there are serious crimes where somebody stuck a knife in some people and other people saw it, and there's no doubt about it. But there are serious cases where there is not clear direct evidence. And these nurse cases are an example of such, right? These are nursing units where people are dying. So there is a serious problem of distinguishing a natural death from an unnatural death, and that's not the problem which the police are particularly the people to do. So such cases go wrong quite a lot, and the estimate is about 10%. And actually, and it's the same in the Netherlands. It's like similar. I think it's probably everywhere. Now, many of the 10% are probably people who were criminals anyway, but they've been put away for a different crime than the other ones.
Yeah.
But there are all kinds of ways of like you can interrogate prisoners, or you can interrogate prison governors, and they'll all basically say, yeah, it's about 10%, 5 to 10%, I don't know. But the system it's a human system, and it's going to make mistakes, and especially in serious cases with huge emotions, it's more prone, and only indirect evidence is going to make more mistakes. And the problem is not so much that it makes that percentage of mistakes, but that it has so much difficulty in correcting them.
Exactly. Right? That's what I was going to say. That's
the problem.
Yeah, humans make mistakes, but you need to admit them when you've made them.
Yes, otherwise you don't learn from them. Absolutely. Now, the CCRC has been sort of publicly ridiculed and shamed because of doing such a bad job in recent years. And so one can hope that it's going to do its best for Lucy Letby in a good sense, and that it'll start doing better. But it's still the case that the Court of Appeal is, because what can the CCRC do? It passes a case back to the Court of Appeal saying we think she's innocent, or we think this it is not beyond reasonable doubt that she's guilty. That's probably what they can officially say, and then ask the Court of Appeal to look at it. But the Court of Appeal has a tendency not to take any such request seriously at all, and simply look for some silly legal ruling, and typically a ruling which they've made themselves in the past, and the Court of Appeal is a law unto itself. The British Parliament passes laws but judges interpret them, and judges actually make laws because Britain has case law, which means you look back in all the past cases and see what judges have said in the past.
Yeah, so you set precedents and then you can just apply that later on,
exactly.
basically.
Yeah. Now, lots of precedents have been set which are probably stupid but they are seized on in order to do the easy thing for a court of appeal, which is to refuse the appeal. And that's happening more and more. And I suspect that Parliament should step in and change the laws to make the Court of Appeal sort of force the Court of Appeal to take CCRC recommendations more seriously.
Now, we've spoke out about it, you've spoke out about it, and now it's finally getting some traction in the mainstream media. I don't know about you, but when we first started saying stuff about it, all kinds of abuse.
So much. I mean, I had someone who's well known in the right wing, behind the scenes, bit of a mover and shaker, actually sent me a WhatsApp message saying, I don't think you should talk about this because you're losing support by speaking about Lucy Letby. I didn't even respond to that.
Flawed evidence, systemic failures, and a woman's life hanging in the balance. In 2025, is Lucy Letby a scapegoat? Join our fight for justice.
She was a young, passionate, caring nurse who tried herself to raise the alarm many times, and they didn't listen. In fact, they became defensive, like they had done with me. And then, especially, if you're, from a very simple background, dare I say it, a woman, a young woman, you become the problem.
Do you think
they
she'll
make
ever?
You the problem.
Do you think she'll ever be released, Sarah? Do you think that this will ever come out enough to ensure that? I know I'm asking you a crystal ball question. I get that.
I think if we all stand together, and I have an awful lot of families who are willing to step forward, if we all stand together and campaign, I think she will. I think with those that are the biggest voices around it currently, I think it's unlikely.
Definitely the word is spreading, but I think it's spreading very, very slowly. Because most people don't watch the TV anymore. No. Most people, it's not like the old days where we all watching ITV, BBC One. You go to the school playground, everyone would watch the same TV show the day before, or you went into the office and everyone would watch the same show. Now there's so many different things that are distracting people. So I think it's harder to get the word out because you have to get the word out at the same time on so many different platforms. You have to get because a lot of people just, like my ex-partner, the mother of my youngest son, she just watches Disney Plus. She watches Grey's Anatomy on Disney Plus and stuff like that, and the Hallmark channel. She doesn't watch news. She doesn't buy newspapers. So anything she knows about Lucy Letby, she knows from me. Yeah. Because she doesn't. And a lot of her friends are like that. They don't watch news channels. They don't go on YouTube. They don't really use much social media, and they don't, read newspapers.
And most newspapers, I've got no skin in the game when it comes to the Daily Mail, but the Daily Mail seems to be doing, at least talking about it, more, I would say, probably more than the rest of the newspapers. I know there have been certain articles in others, but
the Telegraph has also done quite a bit, actually, probably almost as much as the Daily Mail, maybe.
That's good, because people need to talk about it. Because, like I say, I spoke about it on social media, and I know the Unity News Network, they're very good talking about it as well. And you were just getting attacked.
And that, going back to that chart showing the nurses that were on duty, why wasn't there a chart showing which doctors were on duty? So from the very outset, Gareth, this has all been about blaming a nurse, whereas the lack of medical competence on that unit was known to be a problem. There was a senior consultant, Dr. Gibbs, who was about to retire, and he wasn't as involved as he should have been. Junior doctors were performing cannulations and catheterizations without the skill to do it properly. They were taking multiple attempts, risking injury and infection. This was not a well-run unit. And Lucy Letby, I believe, is the fall girl. And what a terrible way for her to be made a scapegoat. She is now set to spend the rest of her life in prison for crimes which I believe there's a strong possibility she did not commit.
So the consultant that said he saw her standing over the baby that was deteriorating quickly and she hadn't raised the alarm and that was a red flag. Well, as soon as they found emails where he'd said at the time, I was called there by Lucy Letby, that should be enough to reopen it.
Every single one of those things should be enough on its own. But you've got dozens of them. It's obvious there should be a retrial, or I think the charges should just be quashed and she should be released immediately. But I think it's because there are people who, they think that by not reopening the trial, or if they do reopen it, it's going to call into question the integrity of British justice.
My crystal ball says she will be, but I no way of predicting whether it's going to be a few months, a year, several years, or 10 years or 20 years. And of course, I don't know if she'll survive 20 years, if it does take 20 years. I think it's inevitable. Basically, I think it's inevitable, but the system is incredibly slow and doesn't want to give up and doesn't want to admit that it's made bad mistakes, but it's just piling up all the time, and all the other problems with maternity care in the UK are piling onto this as well.
Like, how dare you say this? It's cut and dry. And it's like, have you actually even looked at the case? And these people hadn't. They just, I saw it on the telly. And so the more information, like people like yourself, Carl, can get out to people, the better.
They don't realise that British justice's reputation has been shot to pieces already. Nobody believes in it. I used to believe in it. I used to believe in the establishment, the police, the justice system, the judges, the MPs, the royal family. I was brought up to believe in them, but I don't believe in a single one of them now.
No.
I mean, maybe there are some individuals within each of those organisations and sectors who are decent people, but as a whole, they're acting against ordinary people.
But so LucyLetby.org, and Sarah and I have got like the top article at the moment on that blog is by Sarah and me, and it's about these twins and triplets business, which is pretty technical and complicated, I warn you, but it's incredible. 2/3 of the babies in the indictment are twins and triplets. And not just any twins and triplets, but twins and triplets with very serious complications.
Yeah.
Why? Why were they at the Countess of Chester?
It's a very good
Nobody
question.
has asked that question yet. We're asking the question. We don't know the answer either.
No, but that's the point, isn't it? These are the questions that need to be asked. There's lots of questions, I think, of the whole thing that weren't asked, to be honest. So it's great that you're doing it, Richard, and we thank you for that. And I'm sure Lucy and her family do as well.
Lucy Letby's conviction rests on a house of cards. Flawed statistics, fabricated charts, and a hospital's hidden failures. Was she a scapegoat for a broken system? Act now, demand justice, challenge the evidence, and join the fight to free her.